Well, hello there, journeyers. How are you doing today? I hope your journey is going well, and I hope, as always, you are taking the higher path, the higher journey, as it were. This is Alexis Brooks from Higher Journeys, and I'm back. I'm back from the UK with another episode of Conscious Commentary. Back from the UK. What a trip it was. For those of you that have been tuning in, you will no doubt know that we did a lovely trip over to the UK to film some shows. Talk about that for a minute or so. It was phenomenal. Oh my gosh. You know, I love savoring memory. They say we should live in the present, not in the future or the past, but the present. But I got to tell you something. There's something to be said for reflection on good memories. And so I take time to do just that when I've had a great time, and I sure did in the UK. I want to thank everyone who wished me well on the trip, and everyone that I got to meet over there. I got to meet some of you in the Higher Journeys audience during a talk with Mary Rodwell. What a surprise. Really, really neat and fun to meet some of you and hear some of your stories, etc. So the whole thing was just phenomenal. I'm going to take a couple of minutes and just share a couple of thoughts with you before we get into today's theme, which I hope you will enjoy. And it is basically inspired by one of the shows we filmed over there, but that in a moment. I have to tell you, and I'm still just giggling because, you know, good friends will sometimes be tricksters for good reason. And I'm thinking of one person in particular, a friend who I met while I was over there. Actually, I know, but I met up with him while I was over there. And he says, Alexis, I'm going to take you to Glastonbury. I'm going to take you to the Glastonbury tour. We're going to go walk the tour. Well, of course, I had to look it up and find out what this was all about. It's a fabulous place, monument, I believe of Celtic origin. Correct me if I'm wrong, folks in the UK. A monumental site, about 2.5 miles that lead up to a tower that is, oh gosh, I don't know how old it is. It's quite old. But nonetheless, when you get to the very top, you get to see a 360-degree view of the area leading out to the sea, I believe. It's absolutely stunning. Okay, well, it's a beautiful place. Was looking forward to going. I had looked it up because he had given me a heads up that he'd be taking me there to go on the tour. Well, we get to the foot of the walk, and he says, Alexis, you're going to be doing this yourself. This is your day, your pilgrimage. And I looked at him and I said, are you kidding me? You're going to stay down here and you're just going to let me go by myself, not accompany me. And I'm going to do this myself. Okay. All right, fine. Bet. I'll do it. Well, after a little bit of a tug of war, I did go. It's quite the hike. I don't know that I was entirely perfectly dressed for this, but luckily I had on some good walking shoes. But it was phenomenal. At the end of the day, after I stopped sort of cursing under my breath, saying, why did he make me do this by myself? But I understood. It was a pilgrimage. It is something that I think everyone should do. And if you can do it by yourself, it's a great opportunity to reflect, to think or think of nothing, just take in the beauty. But it is a little bit of a hike, I will say. So now, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to do Camino de Santiago. Just kidding. I don't know if I'm ready for that. Are you guys familiar with the Camino? That is the pilgrimage that can last weeks. I interviewed Sonia Choquette several years ago about her alone pilgrimage doing the Camino. Anyway, I don't want to go off on a tangent there. I just wanted to give you that little update. So I did the Glastonbury tour by myself, and I actually enjoyed it. I also had another friend that took me over to, have you heard of the Stanton Drew Stone Circle? The Stanton Drew Stone Circle is a lesser known sacred site. And, you know, obviously we know about Stonehenge and other areas in the English countryside. But this is the Stanton Drew Stone Circles, they're just outside of the village of Stanton Drew in the English county of Somerset. It is considered the largest stone circle, I think it's the second to the, you know what, I'm wrong there. It's not as well known. I think the largest stone circle is the Great Circle. But nonetheless, this is a a place of Druidic origin, and there are said to have been many ceremonies that have taken place there, ritualistic in nature. Some a bit occult. I believe there's occult leanings with all of these areas. There's speculation that there may be ley lines in the area, as well as extreme electromagnetic fields or magnetic anomalies. And I'm going to use this as a segue to get into our topic of discussion. We're going to be talking about electromagnetic anomalies, or particularly magnetic anomalies on various places of our planet, including perhaps some of the places that I've got to visit when I was in the UK. So let me use that as a segue, because I could go on and talk about my trip to the UK. Maybe we'll close out with a couple of comments, and I can tell you a little bit about a couple of the shows that I did that were phenomenal. Speaking of the UK, while over there, one of the interviews that I was so delighted to be able to do was with a gentleman named Steve Mera. Shout out to Steve. Many of you may know his name. He is renowned in the field of paranormal as well as ufological investigation. He's been doing it for about 35 years, and he is, I have to tell you, he knows what he's talking about. This man is a walking encyclopedia, and I think I called him that on the record. He knows just about every aspect of paranormal investigation, some of the new approaches being taken to investigating these anomalies, thousands and thousands of them all over our planet, not the least of which is the UFO subject. Well, we had a great discussion. I'm not going to leak too much, because that show's not quite ready yet. I'll certainly let you know when it is. But we spoke about magnetic anomalies on the planet and how that plays into phenomena, including UFOs and contact with a number of non-human intelligence, how that may be encouraging that sort of activity, how magnetic anomalies on our planet may be, in fact, creating portals to allow certain beings to come through. This is an interesting thing. It's not the first time I've broached this subject with some of my colleagues and my guests, and even talked about it on the show. But I love the way he really, again, research rich, and we're going to have a lot of visuals when we do this show, so you can get a peek into how this thesis has been substantiated by Steve as well as others, that magnetic anomalies on our planet are consistent with a cornucopia of activity. We say phenomena, or the field of phenomenology is showing that these things are happening in excess where there are high concentrations of magnetic anomalies. Before I go any further in this, and well, you know what? Let me go ahead and set this up, because I want to play a couple of clips for you that will take us a little bit further into the conversation. In the midst of my discussion with Steve during our filmed show, something occurred to me about if magnetic anomalies, or let's just say even in a broader sense, the electromagnetic spectrum, depending on its configuration, the energy that it's emitting, if it is has a tendency to, we'll say, conjure activity of all kinds, and there is a spectrum of what we call phenomena, what about our own electromagnetic field? What about our own bioelectricity, or a bioelectric field? Let me go in and just play this clip for you first, because this is where I asked the question, and we'll get his response, and then we will continue this conversation. Listen to this real quick. There's a walking encyclopedia here as you talk, and it gets me going and thinking about the magnetic anomalies that seem to be consistent with the manifestation of phenomena. You're talking about earthly or surface magnetic anomalies, having to do with terra firma or other planets. But what about magnetic anomalies within us? I got to thinking, if we are indeed electromagnetic in nature, I would imagine there's a spectrum of what that looks like for each individual. And remember how you said a little while ago that it seems like the individual that is witnessing, or the experiencer, has something to do with the level or the extent to which they experience phenomena. could it have something to do with their own biogenetic makeup, including our own electromagnetic field?
I would say that is something more hereditary. I think it's within a lineage. I think it might, because some people have phenomena following the lineage, the family line, from grandfather to father, from father to son, and so on and so
absolutely.
forth. I think there's something there on a biological and a chemical sense.
Okay.
However, there is also experiments that have taken place in that exactly what you are saying, because there was the US government have been involved in what you're trying to refer to is shifting the phase of a human, so that they literally can walk through a wall. You know, the experiments have been allegedly, I want to say allegedly, been successful in some areas.
So I found his answer quite interesting. His feeling is that individuals who tend to attract phenomena into their lives, that it may be more of an intergenerational link, a chemistry, a genetics, versus the electromagnetic field. I get that. And in fact, we've talked about that before with, as a matter of fact, Mary Rodwell. That very well may be true. I mean, we really don't know how all of this works. But, you know, as I went back and I listened to or watched our show while we were in production, actually, the question that I asked intrigued me to the point where I said, you know, I think I want to bring this over to Conscious Commentary, see what the journeyers have to say about this. Do you understand what I was asking in that little clip? Essentially, we could kind of take this as an equation or a syllogism, I think it's called. If A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. If concentrated magnetic anomalies in various parts of our planet may be the trigger for more phenomena to occur, and we in fact are magnetic in nature as well as electric, and some certain individuals are attracting phenomena into their lives, could it be that our own electromagnetic makeup may be triggering phenomena in our own lives? That was my question. And where I think he had a good point as in terms of the why some people attract more phenomena than others, I think he had a good point there for sure. I do have a sense that we may be experiencing certain phenomena based on our own bioelectric makeup. In addition, in fact, it could be that the two are intertwined. There may be an intergenerational aspect that would make some people more, let's say, energy field stronger. See, I want to be careful here, guys, because I'm certainly not a scientist. I'm really, from a layperson's perspective, just kind of looking at this, putting some puzzle pieces together. Let's look at, I've got so many notes here and I want to make sure I get everything in. But let's take this theme. So we're talking about, it's pretty well known that magnetic anomalies, there are quite a few around the earth. As a matter of fact, let me do this. I want to talk about what Linda Moulton Howe and I spoke of when I interviewed her last June at Contact in the Desert. She had some very interesting things to say about the government's knowledge of certain collapsing magnetic fields. I believe there are 7 that were identified quite some time ago, back in 1982, I believe, and that governments are aware that these exist and had this, not feeling, but I guess their research has shown that when these, where these magnetic field collapses are happening, they've been trying to block them because they feel that portals are being created and allowing phenomena, including intelligent beings, to come through. This is exactly what she said, which correlated with what Steve, Mara, and I spoke of in the course of our interview. As a matter of fact, let's do this. Another clip I want to play for you. I'm trying to set this up where he talks about Philip Corso, very well known in this field many years ago, is the one who initially talked about these 7 magnetic anomalies that were discovered in the 80s. And it could be that the anomalies are the fact that these fields are collapsing and how the governments are aware of it. And how they are really trying to block the collapsing so that the phenomena can stop coming through. Listen to this clip, and then we'll continue from there.
Now, I do know when we go back to years ago in the 1980s, when this discussion took place with Philip Corso, he said in 1982 that the US government at that time were looking into 7 major magnetic anomalies on Earth.
I just spoke about that with Linda Moulton Howe.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yes.
Now, the government know there's a correlation between these. And what have these just come out? Because I've said to people about portals, and they go, oh, you're crazy, you know, you're talking about all that weirdo stuff. I said, really? Okay, let's look at NASA and what they've got. NASA have just announced that portals are real.
Yes.
And also where they are.
Right.
Now, these portals, a lot of the portals lie between us and our sun.
Mm-hmm.
Right in the middle, there are large, sustainable portals there which could be utilised. Mm-hmm. And I think that, you know, when I've asked and talked to ufologists all around the world, I said, do you have just one piece of evidence to say these UFOs are travelling to us through from the depths of space, from deep space? Mm-hmm. There isn't one. There's not one there's not one, look at all the cases that we got, and there's not one piece of evidence to say that this is coming from deep space and travelling to Earth. Because I don't think that's our thinking. I think that's our physics and our principles. I think what's happening is that they're utilising these electron diffused regions. This is what we refer to, electron diffused regions or portals. And they're utilising stepping stones. And the stars are the stepping stones. Boom, 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 boom,
amazing.
Boom. And this is what are happening. I think they're travelling in this manner and always have been able to do so. And utilising, this is why they love the Earth, utilising planets Earth's little doorways to get in and get out.
This is fascinating. This is turning into a grand dot connecting exercise, I have to tell you. So we're talking about several different sources, obviously all in contact with one another. Steve Mera, Linda Moulton Howe. In fact, I want to quote what Linda had said in our interview last June. She said, based on her sources, quote, "We know we are in a universe where other intelligences take advantage of the collapse of magnetic fields, whether it is produced by technology or it happens naturally. So we've been going around blocking." This is somebody that she quoted, one of her insiders who I would imagine are, you know, actively working to stop, to block these magnetic collapses. I'm assuming the anomalies that Steve Mera is talking about are indeed the collapsing of the magnetic fields. That's the anomaly in and of itself. So we got something going on here. Now, I don't want to stay on this aspect of it too long, because where I'm going, let's go back to this first clip where I posed to Steve, if magnetic anomalies, or EMF, electromagnetic frequencies on a broader scale, are perhaps causing portals to be created and phenomena to happen, and we have in our own biogenetic makeup, we are electromagnetic, among other things, but that's how we operate. Could that be impetus for certain people to experience more phenomena, including ET contact, than others? That is really where I'm going here. And it took me a while to get there, but this is where I want to go. What do you guys think? Again, you know how I am. It's not about a statement, it's a question. I find it intriguing, however. I think there's something going on, in addition to perhaps an intergenerational link. Let me tell you about an article that I actually posted about a year or so ago called "The Body Electric: Are Human Energy Fields Stronger Than We Realize?" And this was a post that I acquired from another site, but I actually kind of put my own spin on it. But I want to read something to you, a couple of things, and we're going to bring in another element. We're talking about phenomena, the electromagnetic field, and then eventually we're going to get to the role emotions play in exciting phenomena. In this case, we're talking about the body electric, how certain individuals, for whatever reason, based on their biogenetic makeup, have the ability to shut down electronics, computers, digital clocks, watches, lights outside on occasion, radios, all sorts of things. You've heard of this before. As a matter of fact, there's a term for it that I recently became familiar with called slider. A slider, SLIDER, somebody who has a very active bioelectric field and affects electronics in this way. But let me just read a little bit from this article, The Body Electric. By the way, one of the most popular articles on the Higher Journey site. I'll make sure to have a link so you can check it out. But in it says, essentially, an energy field or electric field is a physics term used to describe the magnetic fields created in the space surrounding electrically charged particles. Because of our electrically charged particles, our cells and tissues generate electrical fields. This is typically referred to as an aura, although it's a bit more complicated than that. It is believed and seen and experienced by many that your aura can interfere, interrupt, and even affect and break computers and electronic devices. For some, this happens routinely, and they go through device after device, with each one breaking for no apparent reason. For others, the problem is experienced intermittently, like when their emotions are running high, they're overly stressed out, or when they are sick or run down. And yet others still will never experience this phenomenon at all. I wanted to stick that little piece of the article in. And again, I would definitely encourage you to go over to the Higher Journey site and read the article in its entirety, because there's some hints there. I'm really trying to bring a few elements together to show perhaps that we are also, in addition to maybe things outside of us, if there is such a thing, we are also integral in perhaps shifting energy and allowing for phenomena to come through. That phenomena would include breaking down devices, shutting things off. Are some people's auric fields a little bit more excited electromagnetically than others? And then let's talk about emotions for a bit. Now, I'm bouncing around, so I hope you know me. I get caught up in a tangent sometimes. This is one of them because I think it's exciting. It says that we are emitting so much energy. What are we actually doing in creating our reality, including some of the phenomena that we experience? But from an emotional standpoint, this is something that's always intrigued me as well. Extreme emotion somehow seems to excite or trigger, I think, our own EMF, our own electromagnetic field. Extreme emotion may cause it to get louder than usual energetic centers, or, well, louder than normal, I should say, causing them to go off and in turn causing phenomena, including paranormal activity, to occur. Could that be happening? I have seen examples of people in extremely emotional states. It could be euphoria or it could be fear. And I have seen, or at least heard of, things happening in the throes of that extreme emotion. Let me give you one little example. And it's not little because it was important at the time, and it still is. I have a fond memory of it. I have a very distinct memory of it, I should say, because it's stuck with me for so many years. And it has to do with my father grieving over the loss of my mother. And bless him, he was in such a state of grief for so long, sustained grief. And I'll never forget, I wasn't there, but he told me this. One day, he had been thinking of my mom. I don't know how long she had been gone, maybe a year or so, and got into an extremely high emotional state where he was crying out loud and calling her name, just in the throes of grief. And he said, Alexis, right in the middle of all of that, I know I heard a voice say, my mom used to call my dad Hun, it's okay. It's okay. I'm okay. I can't remember exactly what he said he heard her say, but my mother's voice came through to console him. We could call that phenomena, could we not? I bet you've heard of cases like this too. And I always remember this example, this little anecdote that my father told me, because I started to think, it's interesting how when our emotions get to be extreme, there is something happening to our own electromagnetic field. And in that movement of energy or that acceleration, the frequency, could we be opening up, I'm going to go there, a portal, even micro, mini, I believe Steve in one of the clips talked about these little mini portals that are being created, really all over the place, not just on the surface of our planet and in our skies, but in ourselves, in our environment. The emotion may be triggering or affecting the bioelectric field, the biogenetics of ourselves, the electromagnetic field, which may be causing portals, which may allow for phenomena including discarnate voices, ghostly apparitions, UFOs, etc., to come through. Wow. This really kind of makes me think here. We have something to do with the phenomena that we're seeing. Not all, but I have a feeling we have something to do with it. Other examples of extreme emotion. When I think of the word emotion, I think of in motion. When emotion is high, things get into motion and move, including the electromagnetic spectrum of which we are immersed in. And that's when things happen. But another example of that, have you ever been, now I know that only certain religions, I'm thinking particularly the Pentecostal religion or branch of Christianity, of which I've seen, I'm not part of that, but you will see certain church services where people will get happy. we used to call it getting happy, getting into where the Holy Ghost takes over, in other words, and people will start, screaming and jumping up and down, high emotion, and really move themselves into an altered state. And all of a sudden they start speaking in tongues and strange things start to happen. Extreme emotion once again. I don't want to belabor that point too much, but I want to make the connection and really have you guys weigh in on, is there a connection? Emotion is, I would imagine, there's an electromagnetic component to it. So again, we're talking about magnetic anomalies on the surface of our planet. Perhaps things that would allow for anomalies in our own electromagnetic makeup to trigger and conjure phenomena. I want to cite another article. This idea of causing electrics to go haywire. People, this term that I used before called slider, and this article is called "Are You a Slider?" The phenomena of high energy people causing electronics to go haywire. And this is important because this is where I connected another dot. Let me read this little quote for you. It says, quote, This shift in frequency could have a number of different causes." This is going into how people become this way. "Many who have had near-death experiences report having slider phenomena happen from that point forward. Other sliders have been struck by lightning or suffered a major electrical shock at some point in the past. Still others claim to have had UFO or alien experiences." This is what got me. Some claim to have had UFO or alien experiences. Now, this is interesting, and I'm going like right in the middle of the article. I'm not going to read the whole article to you. This is interesting because this will tie in to a conversation I had earlier today with my friend Ray Hernandez from Free. Shout out to Ray. I wanted to pose the question to him in the incredible data that Free has gathered. Free being a foundation for research into extraterrestrial and extraordinary experience. They have gathered so much information to try to cross-correlate certain points. And my question for him was he able to determine or discern from any of the data collected that people who were ET contact experiencers, could they fall into the category of being a slider, someone who affects electronics, someone who's electronically sensitive? Because I thought that could be another dot to connect. But here's what he said, and it actually connects a little bit more with the paragraph that I just read to you, that rather than these people having a propensity to shut down electronics, all of their lives, after they've had a near-death experience or a UFO encounter, they then become more susceptible to shutting down electronics. So it seems like something is happening in the contact experience. We'll eliminate the NDE for the time being because we're kind of focusing more on contact with non-human intelligence, although I think they're all somehow connected. Something is happening where the experiencer, in the midst of the encounter, or a series of encounters for that matter, is their own electromagnetic field perhaps is being altered. It's being altered in such a way that Ray described it as the brain being sort of a filter and filtering out a lot of the phenomena that's around us for most people. But in the case of people having extraterrestrial encounters or encounters with non-human intelligence after the fact, the filter is less. There's more of an allowance for phenomena, well, I guess other phenomena to come through. So the question I pose is our electromagnetic field being altered to allow, more sensitivity overall? You can get lost in this. And if I don't shut it down soon, I'm going to get lost in it because it can be confusing. It's definitely complex. There are a lot of questions. But again, you got to ask the questions, guys. There's something going on with our own EMF, the planet's EMF, the phenomena that is being experienced, high concentrations of phenomena in certain areas or with certain people. And I think this is something to note. I want to see if there's anything else I want to bring up here. As with always, I bring up these points to have you take it in, process it for yourself. Are you somebody that is a slider? Are you sensitive to electrics? I know there are a lot of people that are. I know some. I don't tend to be, but I certainly have witnessed people shutting down electronics. PMH Atwater, by the way, is somebody else that's talked about that as it relates to NDEers, near-death experiencers, after their NDE. Once again, we're seeing this consistency in that after the NDE experience, they will become highly sensitive on a number of levels, not the least of which is with electronics. So let me leave you with this. I'm posing, we're looking at a problem or we're looking at a question, and I don't have the answer. But let's say you are a sensitive person. You're shutting down electronics. You're getting bombarded by phenomena. You're being haunted. Let's say it's stuff that you're not necessarily wanting to continue. This is just something I want to put out there and to close this down. What can you do about it? Let's say you have a tendency to get emotionally wrought or, high strung, all of that stuff. And it's triggering certain things. What can you do about it? And although I don't know that there is a quick fix, I doubt that there is. There could be some things that actually Steve Mera, my interview over in the UK, brought up that I'd like to pass on to you. He brought up some interesting elements that we may be able to bring into our environment to kind of mitigate these effects. One is the use of iron, like iron from a horseshoe or iron spikes. We're going to talk more about that in the interview, so I'm not going to get into that. I'm not an expert on why iron works. He's not even really sure why it works, but apparently it was used for many, many years to ward off evil spirits and perhaps even excess ET activity. The use of iron. Get yourself some iron. In fact, he wears a necklace with a little iron sort of pendant on his person all the time. I can't wait for this interview to come out because he really goes into a lot of depth. You'll get a ton out of it. So iron, okay. One thing that I tend to use to mitigate not only just negative stuff, but certain harmful EMFs like our computers or cell phones, and that's hematite. Hematite is a mineral that is, I believe there's iron content in hematite, so that would make sense. In fact, magnetized hematite. I'm looking at a hematite egg that I keep in front of my monitor. It's been there forever. I should probably go clear or clean it. So hematite. And the third thing I would say is, particularly because we're bringing the emotional state into this whole mix, is somehow figuring out a way to regulate emotions. We kind of touched on this in the last conscious commentary on retro-synchronicity and being empathic. All of these things on some level connect. The key is the more you understand yourself, how we understand ourselves and how we work, including our empathic state, our emotions, our electromagnetic aspect, the more we can understand how we work, the more we can maybe regulate what comes into our lives. including phenomena. And I'm not saying we want to get rid of all phenomena, because I think a lot of it we can learn from. But we still want to understand, don't we? We still want to have some sort of understanding of how reality works. And I still think we are purely scratching the surface. So that's it. I could go on forever on this, but it was that question that I posed to Steve about magnetic anomalies within ourselves possibly being partial cause for phenomena, including ET, UFO anomalies. So there you go. There you have it. We're going to leave that. Let me hear from you. You can always comment on our YouTube channel. You can hit me up on Facebook. You can email me at Higher Journeys, but reach out. I want to know what you're thinking about all this. Okay. All right. I'm out for now, but let me just say announcements, quick announcement. Never Shortage of Stories. This man that you're about to meet has, and his name is Barry Littleton. I am so delighted that he is finally going to be on Higher Journeys next Wednesday. Barry Littleton is an ET contact experiencer. He's been out in the circuit a good bit. He was just on Jimmy Church's show a couple of weeks ago, and I heard that. But shout out, Barry. You did a fantastic job, but I hope you saved some exclusive stories for me, because we're going to have Barry Littleton on next Wednesday to talk about his own journey in this odyssey we call reality. Next week, Barry Littleton. And then, of course, again, stay tuned for my full on-location interviews from the UK with Mr. Steve Mera, with Mary Rodwell, and somebody new to the Higher Journeys roster of guests, and her name is Charmaine Di Rosario Sage. Charmaine was one of the hybrids featured in the book that I narrated, Meet the Hybrids, and it was such a treat to get to meet her. Our interview was, let's just say, interesting. I'm gonna keep dangling that out there. Boy, wait to hear the story of what happened and what it took to get our interview partially done. We'll leave it there as a cliffhanger. But in the meantime, folks, I always appreciate you tuning in. Thanks for being on the journey with me. I'll talk to you real soon. Take care.